All right, thank you for having us here. I'm Dan Adamson, founder and CEO of OutsideIQ. I'm here with Sandy Gruel, who's our lead integration manager. And we're here today to talk to you about DDIQ and the launch of the DDIQ API, which we're very excited about. So we'll tell you just a little bit about DDIQ. It was created after years of R&D building out a cognitive computing platform that we built largely up in Toronto with a few developers interspersed globally. After about 5 years, we launched our first banking product last March called DDIQ. It is built on top of this cognitive computing platform, and it's been trained by leading FinCrime experts to essentially behave, act, think, and discover content like a FinCrimes expert would. So it goes out, it can look at structured, unstructured content. It can make assessments about risk and then decide what to do next based on what it's learned. So this is quite powerful, and we'll of course show you examples today. It works in an iterative fashion, so it's not instantaneous. It can take 5 or 10 minutes to build a profile or a report, but it's essentially emulating what a researcher would do as they're learning about a subject. So it works over 18 different languages, over 200 different jurisdictions. It emulates what a researcher might produce if they spend hours on a subject. Right, so this does it at the fraction of a time. It never gets tired like a human researcher, though. It obviously has the strengths of computers on its side, and what are computers great for? Going through massive amounts of data. Where are computers generally weak? You know, traditionally, they've been very weak around context, though, right? So understanding that data. So this is really where the cognitive computing platform comes in, and it's able to pull out and extract context, which is just absolutely critical for a problem like this. So if you start Googling, and this is what often FinCrimes researcher would do every day to start off an investigation, they would start learning about a subject, and they'd be going through hundreds of thousands of search results, right? And this is me Googling myself. I'm interspersing some bad words in here to try to narrow down the results, but there's still about 1 million results here. And of these results, most of these are, I'm happy to say, not me, right? They're other Dan Adamsons. But for a computer to understand that is actually quite a difficult problem. So our cognitive computing technology goes through all of this content, learns about the real Dan Adamson, that's me in this case, and realizes that all of these articles are about other Dan Adamsons out there. Then it goes and it actually does find one about me, but it's me in the wrong context again. It's me talking about fraud, right? So it's able to make that assessment as well. And the report that it produces after going through and analyzing all of this content is that actually Dan Adamson's a good guy, or rather Dan Adamson's maybe not a bad guy, right? So here's a clean profile with 0 adverse content in it. We'll show you some examples later on and show you the API underneath, of course, but we wanted to just give you a quick flavor of what it does and where it fits. So, you know, in the industry, due diligence really has this big gap between simple screening databases. These are, you know, watch list databases. These are databases of adverse content that have been humanly curated. They're a small fragment of the information that's actually publicly available that they have tried to capture and curate and maintain. That's very different from what would be returned by a human investigator. You can actually buy due diligence reports. They start at about $500 and move into thousands of dollars. They take days to produce, right? It's time consuming. It is error prone and inconsistent as well. It depends on whether the researcher's having a good day, whether they're hungover or not. So often there's a quality control to it, and it's a very complicated process. We are essentially filling that gap. So today, you can create an initial DDIQ risk profile in a matter of minutes that has looked at all of that publicly available content, has gone to the premium sources that you require, has gone to your internal content that you require. And that's a very important gap to fill, right? So it's a critical problem that we're addressing, and it's able to produce these reports in a matter of minutes. Just to give you a flavor of where it's being used, so when we start talking about the API, you can figure out where it fits. It's essentially any place where you have human researchers today, and you want to speed up that process so that they can do the research in a matter of minutes and not days. This is where the DDIQ due diligence solution comes to play. So we have lenders using it as part of a lending platform, right, to make an adjudication decision, understanding their customers better. We have banks using this for onboarding, for regulatory compliance, know your customer, right? We have it being used for account refreshes, so doing that at scale. Now you can take hundreds of thousands of client accounts, go through them and really sift through all of that noise and say, what is the top 1% that really is the risky 1% that I really have to focus on? Right, DDIQ can do that. It's being used for payment screening. It's being used for fraud investigations, for AML investigations. Anywhere where you need a quick snapshot, where you need some customer insight, DDIQ can come into play. It's also being used for investments, for example, to understand your portfolio, to understand, do due diligence up front and not wait till the end of a deal. It's being used to monitor as well your portfolio, to be an early warning indicator. And it's not just being used for clients or investments, it's also being used for supplier risk. So know your vendor, know your supplier, know your third-party reseller. So, the FCPA requires, the UK Bribery Act requires detect and monitoring programs. These are very expensive to implement and traditionally, and very manual, labor-intensive problems. If you have worked with your procurement centers with your banks, you realize, if you work for a bank and you have to deal with procurement, you realize how long and laborious the traditional process is. So that's some of the few areas. I want to just show you a quick example of this working, or actually Sandy can run through. This is a UI that we've built on top of our API, which we'll show you. You can build a company profile from here, a person profile. It works looking at companies as entities, individuals as entities, or the combination thereof. You can do screening of companies with their management team, for example. So this is a simple user interface to input data. It requires minimal data. The more that you give it, the better it's able to latch on and the faster it's able to learn. But you can enter pretty minimal data, including just a company name and a jurisdiction, for example. We'll jump over and show you a built report. This can take about 5 or 10 minutes, depending on the size of the risk. This is an example company, a fairly large company. It was seeded with just a name and a location. It's gone through, though, and found all of these alternative names that they operate under. It's found a bunch of general context that's useful for due diligence and to know your client or know the party. It's found a bunch of information about their corporate records. It's found the people associated with that company. It's found, and all of this is sourceable and referenceable. And in the underlying API, you can see the original sources. If you click through on, for example, the vice president, you can see the links that are associated or affiliated with him. It finds the locations of operations. Where is this company operating? Both where the databases say they're operating and where their footprint actually is on the web. It's found a family tree. So this is sort of all this general context. And you can actually drill down and go from a company to a person. You can take the senior director and drill down and create a report on them as well. It then goes and highlights different areas of risk, regulatory risk, for example. In this case, they have some regulatory issues, adverse content, legal risks. It's gone through the legal databases if you click on legal here. And it's gone through this in all of these languages. It's gone and found noteworthy content that might be relevant in some situations, depending on your due diligence purpose. It's classified all of this content. In this case, it's classified all of these as different risks or different issues or different reasons for them being noteworthy. The exact same thing with the person profile. So Sandy will just jump over and show you this. In this case, very little information was inputted. Actually, a name and a P.O. box, apparently. From there, it's gone out and found all of this content about this individual in this case. The general context is what companies are they affiliated with, what locations, what people are they affiliated with, a biography, in this case, an educational background. In this case, also professional licenses. And this individual, it goes way back. I guess he was originally an engineer, turned into a bit of a financial guru, and then later, unfortunately, a convicted felon. But so in this case, it can follow all that history through, and it's a fairly in-depth report. Right, so that, I hope, gives you an idea. I do want to pass this on to Sandy now, who will show you the API that we're making available today.
Thanks, Dan. Good morning, everyone. My name is Sandy Graywell. I'm the OutsideIQ Integration Manager. What I'd like to show you is our API Explorer. APIs can be notorious for working with. This is an easy way to show you the endpoints that we have, the web service endpoints that we have, the URL constructor, the response, and the request bodies that come back. All our web services use JSON objects for the translation, and we also, our UI that you just saw uses our API as well, so we practice what we preach. So Dan, if you want to search for a company profile, so our first major endpoint is searching, and so this shows you all of this fields that are optional and mandatory. We can search by date range, we can search by a name fragment, and this allows you to search all completed profiles in your space. And the response is right there. And the next one I want to show you is the submission. And if you click on the submit company, and we have an endpoint here for how you submit company profiles and how you submit person profiles. Again, all of our detailed information is in our SDK available for download at the top of this. And here you see all of the fields that are available. We can do a quick one, just put a company name and a country, and you'll see the response that comes back. These web services are authorized by basic HTTP authentication over SSL, so it makes it really easy and quick to integrate into your projects. And then submit. And so you can see the request body, that is the packet that was sent, and then the response, which gives you a unique ID that you can track. All our endpoints use a pretty print parameter that allows you to see the response that comes back in a human-readable format rather than just a big blob of JSON. There we go. So you can see that one profile is now currently in progress. Now you can use this endpoint to trigger events on your side. So once the profile is completed, you can then notify the user who has done it or trigger off any other events that you want to do on your side. So we're copying one of these entity IDs that's already existed, and we're going to pull down retrieve the company profile itself, and just put it in there. So what comes back is the full JSON profile data. So all the adverse media, all the watch list, all the regulatory information is here in a large JSON object that you can traverse and pull information out as you require to build your own reports, to do your own triggers, and to do your own scoring model if you wish. And lastly, I'd like to show the PDF generator that we have. So if we go to the PDF company, so this endpoint delivers a binary stream PDF document in a collapsed format or an expanded format, so you can store it into your own repositories or keep it on file. Like I said, my name is Sandy Graywell. I look forward to seeing you outside and talk to you more in depth about our APIs and integrations. Dan?
Yeah, thank you, Sandy. Just to summarize here, I think very important key points. We've taken all of this content, whether it's structured or unstructured, combined it into these reports, whether they're human readable or machine readable. But we've structured all of that content, and it's now available for your own risk assessments, for your own due diligence. And we hope that you come up with original and unique uses for this, and look forward to seeing you today at our booth. Thanks.